Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Reginald the Vampire. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, it is assessment time, but not before. I completely forgot one of the vampires that served Angela was named LeBron. Had his name come up before about his last name being James, and I even love Reginald. Whoa, your name's LeBron. He's like, I don't know, give yourself a nickname like, I don't know, Cheekbones or Sneaky Pete. But it's like, yeah, like, I mean, there's a pretty famous basketball player with that name. He said, just don't go by your last name. Don't ever say your last name. It's like, yeah. Which he said, like, oh, LeBron James was actually born here in Akron, which I was like, wait, what? Just look that up. I mean, why would the show lie, right? But I had to make sure. I was like, I had no idea that was true. I was like, oh, I guess I just never knew, like, where he was actually born. It's like, oh, so I guess that's Akron's, like, fame, you know, just being like, hey, LeBron James was born here, you know? So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Regardless of it all, I just love that whole just bit back and forth. And Reggie's actually pretty calm about the whole situation. I mean, to be fair, it's like, yeah, that's kind of his defense mechanism. It's like, well, I'm pretty nervous, so I get pretty chatty and stuff like that. But it's like, hey, you know, and LeBron's telling Maurice, if he had just not caused the issue he did in the first episode, we wouldn't be right now, but we're living in this world and not the other one where things could have been different. But for Maurice, it's like, no, I wouldn't change anything. My life, you know, he's happy to have, like, you know, he prefers living in this world where he has, like, Reggie in his life, which you're like, oh, even Reggie's like, oh, sweet. It's like, yeah, that is super sweet. I love that friendship. I love that dynamic that they have. But, when it's time for the assessment, you know, it's like, even Reggie's not 100% sure what his plan's if it's going to work out, but Maurice does believe in him, you know? But it's time for the assessment, and I don't know what I expected the assessment to be. Honestly, I thought it would be like a gladiator-style battle or something like that, or the series of trials I thought would be something else, but it's like, no, they ended up being, like, one of them was name that cheese, and he failed. One was moving the bee to hornet nest thing, like, kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, you just have to move it from one spot to, I thought he was going to do some, like, I thought he was going to, like, find a loophole and it's like, oh, all I have to do is do this. I thought he's going to take that pedestal, the pedestal he's supposed to put it on, put it next to the other one, and then just slide it over so he has less space to walk. Like, I thought that was going to be the deal, but it's like, no, all he had to do was hold his breath. I even love, and he shouldn't feel bad about the jumping thing. It's like, I have no ups either. The fact of the matter is, I guarantee you I would have done worse. I'm pretty sure I've done worse. And I love that the lady who's the one he was trying to talk to, I love that she's like the referee in this situation, and she's just adding all the commentary. She's like, really? That's it? And it's like, and when he gets that scored, she's like, honestly, that's actually really impressive in its own right that you were able to accomplish something that, like, unimpressive, I guess. But it's like, hey, when he started passing different ones here and there, and it's like, hey, so we get down to the last two, so it's like a 50-50. Like, it's kind of like, all right, he's failed some challenges, he's succeeded in others, and now it comes down to the next two. If he loses his next challenge, he automatically fails. That ended up being a transferring, like the beehive, but he passed it. Also love there was the finger trap one, and even Logan was like, wait, what is he talking about? Like, this is impossible. And even Reggie's like, has anyone actually ever failed this finger trap thing? He's like, seriously? You know, because, like, the whole point of the finger trap thing is, like, what movie was it? It was like an animated movie, I believe. It's like, I always associate that with, it's like, right, the whole point is, like, you're stuck together. Or it might have been an animated TV show, but the point is to bring your fingers closer together during just kind of like, the further you move your fingers apart, the tighter it's supposed to get. But the point is to bring your fingers in closer. It's just kind of about working together rather than against each other. It's about almost kind of like a balance. It may be what it's supposed to signify. That's always stuck in my head. Like I said, it's for something anime. Once again, if it's a movie, TV show, I don't remember. Maybe it was on live action, but I could have sworn it was like animated. Whatever the case may be. Also, I didn't know, like, Logan has so many, it's like, oh, the Reanimator, the Unquenchable. I'm like, I'm surprised, Reggie didn't point it out. I'm like, how does this SOB have, like, so many names? I was like, well, you live that long, yada, yada, so on and so forth, right? So, I thought that was interesting. So that was kind of interesting developments. And it's like, right, the claw of impossibility. And lo and behold, it's a claw machine, which I'm like, that's so stupid. But honestly, it is the most evil thing you can come up with. Like, because it's such a, I'm sure there is skill, but there's also luck involved and stuff, because it's just like, oh, it does that terrible thing at the end where it's just like, more of it happened to be on the edge that ended up making it fall back into the pit, you know? And I even love the guard lady, which is kind of like, hey, good luck. You know, he's like, she was like, I'm really sorry. And he was like, no, I really appreciate it. I was like, oh, look at, because like Reggie kind of worn her down, because I think even she was like, yo, I'm actually rooting for you. She's probably supposed to be indifferent. I don't know if she probably doesn't have the intolerance that the rest of the vampires have. Also, these trials seem like super, super old school trials, but the way Logan talks about it, it seems like the assessments haven't been around that long. Like, the fact is that Maurice didn't know about the assessments and stuff like that means they weren't around when he became a vampire, because it's like every newly vampire has to go through it. So this is only like something in the past 50 years, and yet they have such like, if these were like so ingrained, these are from like 1,000 years ago or something like that. I mean, the claw machine, no, but still, like if some of those were like hundreds of years old, like, okay, I guess it's part of tradition that just hasn't been updated. That hasn't been updated or something like that, then it makes sense. But it's like, no, this is within the past 50 years. But I guess that's still enough time for like maybe some of these would still be around then. But yeah, Reggie failed the final test. And I did love the entire episode. He's like talking mad shit to Logan. And it's like, well, what's the point? The bastard's going to kill me anyway. So like, why should I like hold my punches? And it's like, well, it turns out it's all part of the plan. But then, it's time for the sun and the torture. And it's a pretty brutal torture, because it's like, I almost expected it to be kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts, but it's like, no, it's like basically, and you know, which would be worse for a vampire? It's like, yeah, because you heal super fast. And so they keep slicing and slicing. And they slice, wait for it to heal, slice again, wait for it to heal, so on and so forth. So it didn't go on forever. Because Logan's like, yeah, I'll be the one that gets to determine that. But once again, Reggie kind of leaning into him, calling him empty. It's like, right, you can't even appreciate all that's around. You're so stuck in your own ways. You are so cruel and uppity about the perfection of the vampires. It's like, you know, because it's wiping out any impurity. Bringing them closer to divinity, which is so interesting, because it's like, right, you somewhat have your ties connected to divinity because of God and the Cain and Abel situation, but you were kind of like, it's hard to say like you're tied to divinity also when you're like, you are cast to the darkness, can't even be out in the light, you know. So like that's why I feel like, but I guess it's like, right, we're so above humans that we are basically divinity in some regard. But Todd gets brought in, and immediately I'm like, Todd's not a vampire, is he? I was like, there's no way. And turns out that is the case. And I love when Todd's like, I was like, oh, he's faking it. And I was like, okay, what is this? And it turns out the last slice was super deep, and inside of Reggie was something. I was like, what the hell is that? First I was like, is it a bomb? I was like, no. But then he turns out it's a disco ball. They rolls it to Angela. Angela rolls it over to Todd, and they shine the light, and it reflects and hits all the vampires. I love that Reggie told like the lady who was kind of refereeing things, was like, yeah, you might want to get to safety, because she's like, hey, the rest is up to you. Angel like came in with the super soaker, start murking vampires left and right. Didn't get the one he was mainly after, which was Logan. I guess those are high level vampires, but I guess they're not the representatives. Like, kind of like how, obviously, in this area, Angela was that representative. I guess it's like, you would think, but I guess these are just like high-powered vampires, high society vampires. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe because they don't seem like they belong kind of to like that general council, like around the world that have their respective. Maybe they are just like the vampire council with Logan at the top, and that's just his council. And so like them dying doesn't disrupt the vampiric world too much, I guess. Either way, Maurice is the one that ended up killing Logan, which I'm kind of glad that he got that blow in. So, but yeah, it all turns out this is according to Reggie's plan. He went to Angela and he kind of pieced everything together, and it's like, I even love that. Like when it came to this part of it, Maurice was like, "Are you sure about this, buddy?" He's like, "Nah, come on, it's gonna be okay." He's like, "I was made for this." I was like, "Yeah, Reggie!" Like slicing himself open, putting a disco ball in there. I think it obviously is sweet because, like, obviously Sarah didn't even want to, like, look and stuff. So it's like, yeah, no one would want to see, like, him kind of getting disemboweled just to kind of stick the disco ball inside of him. And at the same time, it's like, right, once you die, so the whole point was, like, regardless of it all. And I thought that was interesting considering, like, Sarah and Claire, I guess they wanted to be like, these are the two that you need to worry about. But it's like, yeah, Ashley knew, and so did, well, I guess she's like, other than Todd, she is like the only other human besides Sarah and Claire in his life. So I don't know, because obviously it's like, well, they wouldn't have gone after his parents because they don't know about that. But it's like, so I thought that was, because I was wondering if that was back off the board, still on the board, how that whole situation worked. But just to screw Reggie over, maybe they put that back on the board, or at least a stay of execution for everyone else when it came to, like, hey, I missed out on my assessment, so they shouldn't suffer just because I missed out. The whole point is, hey, I died, they die too, if they know. So, but it's like, okay, luckily Ashley and Sarah were okay because Nikki was there. It's like, wow, they didn't even make it inside before Nikki, like, dusted their asses. And then you had the Claire situation. I figured it was a trap or something, but it's like, oh, she's at the sunbathing place and then, like, sun tanning place. And I'm like, oh boy, they cut off the lights. I was like, did they have something planned here? And then she fires energy at them. I was like, what the I was like, wait, what? And she's almost like, cool. I was like, how did that? It's like, because at first my brain was like, no, she was out in the sunlight, because I was about to say, like, did they become vampires? And did they, because, like, obviously Reggie has a very unique ability that he could glamour other vampires, so I was wondering if there was some correlation. I was like, did they all get different abilities? It's like, no. Find out that's Claire's circumstances. Even later on, Maurice is like, okay, we need to talk about that, because, like, she didn't tell Reggie. So I'm assuming this might have some correlation with her mom. Which are like, because we still don't know what her mom's circumstances are. The only person who's seen whatever it is that is like, yeah, my mom's kind of going through this is Nikki. She's the only one that knows about that. And whether that has any and for Claire, it's like, yeah, this has been happening more recently, which I'm like, if she did become a vampire, like, I wonder, has this been happening before she asked Reggie if she could become a vampire? Maybe she was trying to stop all this from happening, or at the very least, she thought maybe in conjunction with this happening and the strength of a vampire, she could help her mom with whatever her circumstances are. So you made me go like, because the way she made it almost sound like, it sounds like her mom's possessed by something. So part of me wonders, is that like some, like, could it be like a thing of, like, her mom, like, is possessed periodically by, like, a demon or something that kind of takes over, and maybe it's like some kind of, like, Akuma bat powers, Akuma being like demon, Oni Akuma, type of powers that she kind of has. Like, what is that? Once again, we're branching out that this world is full of supernaturals, which, based on Ashley's conversation with Nikki, it turns out, like, oh, no, there are no werewolves, which you're like, oh, interesting. This might be the first vampire universe that I'm aware of where vampire exists where werewolves don't. I mean, I guess, like, I don't think vampires exist in a Teen Wolf universe. I think if I remember correctly, I don't know if it's just Jeff Davies or it's just, like, the entire, like, team behind that show. I think they specifically went out of the way to be like, yeah, we're not going to include vampires in this universe. So, like, werewolves are kind of the alphas here. And I say that just because, like, typically vampires are kind of treated as, like, the higher class, typically alpha species amongst the supernaturals, at least, like, in that hierarchy. At least the Vampire Diaries, they're the most, obviously vampires are the most murderous ones, leaps and bounds beyond werewolves. But I just thought that was so interesting. It's like, it's just an interesting inverse to Teen Wolf in that regard. Teen Wolf is like, nope, we're not doing vampires. This is like, we're not doing werewolves. So, I mean, that doesn't mean there can't be, like, equivalencies, like, True Blood was my first introduction to, like, wait, were-panthers are a thing? Oh god, one of the characters from the iZombie comic what was he again? A were-terrier, I believe, yeah. One of Gwen, that's the character in the comics. Her name, obviously, it's Liv in the show, but it's Gwen in the comics. Her friend, one of them is a ghost, the other one's a were-terrier. And some people had wondered, like, whether Ravi was going to become, like, the were-terrier or not. Never ended up being that case. But, because that show just, like, full zombie, went full zombie, no other supernaturals or whatever. So I'm like, so there, like, my point is there could be, like, other equivalencies, just no werewolves, you know. But so either way, that was a I don't know. It was a nice success that like now you have Maurice being the regional leader, which obviously him saying like, right, once you kill the regional leader, the regional deacon, you get to like take up that role. It's like you keep what you kill type of situation. So I was like, right, he now has a target on his back. Angela's been reinstated to her position. She has I was hoping she'd keep Penelope around because we don't know if that thing between her and Mike was still happening. But then it's like, no, she's keeping both LeBron and Penelope around. It's like, cool, I could still have some uses for you. Go find Eve if she's still alive. It's like, yeah, we never saw Eve completely get angel blood. We just saw her saw her like get burned in the face. I don't think or at least I think she did kind of avoid the angel blood when it was coming her way. Either way, Todd, and Reggie just being like, wow, like, it's like, look at us being friends. It's like, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff has happened, but this is like, thanks, bud. And they kind of dap each other. So, make me a vampire. I was like, what? I just deal with everything I'm dealt with. He's like, come on, I'd be the best vampire. He's like, yes, that's probably true. But for him, it's like, kind of cherish life. Like, with everything that's going on, you kind of seem like the negative side of vampirism. But for him, it's like, no, like, I could be a great vampire. Maurice is kind of saying no. Reggie can continue to say no. It's like, right. So he goes to see Mike, which Mike is like, honestly, yeah, sure. He's like, wait, really? It's like, yeah. I mean, we'll kind of take it slow. It won't be today, won't be tomorrow, but, And then he kisses Mike, and he's like, yo, I'm sorry. He's like, did you let me do that? He's like, no. He's like, no, of course you wouldn't. I mean, it's like, yeah, that was just me. I was just so caught up in the moment. You said you make me a vampire. I was like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, yeah. I do like that Todd is no longer a dick. That's awesome. And also that Nikki and Ashley are getting closer. So we find out exactly how old Nikki is. So she's 300 and... 315-ish, basically. So she's getting asked all these questions, like, obviously, holy water doesn't work on them, garlic doesn't work on them. It's like, yeah, if you prepare it nicely in dishes and stuff like that. She'd asked her something, and she was like, oh, yeah, because there was something she'd asked her. She's like, oh, why wouldn't? It's like, oh, I forgot what it was. Ashley asked some question that she was almost like, oh, why would that be the case? Oh, can you turn into a bat? Like, why would we turn into a bat? It's like, if we could turn anything, why would we turn into a bat? That's so obviously like very cliche. Also, can they fly? And she's like, oh, we wish. Maurice and Angela, they are kind of, because Maurice had talked about this earlier with Mike about the whole conversation of, the conversation of forgiving and forgetting, and like Maurice is on more understanding. He's like, I understand why you did what you did, like what Angela's done for you, and he now probably knows about Mike's circumstances in totality, and it's like, right, I understand why you did what you did. And also he tried to do the right thing in the end too, so I think that speaks volumes and that goes a long way. But yeah, him and Angela, I think he's in his way to kind of forgive Angela after everything that's going down. Yes, it's complicated, but even she's like, right, I'm going to be gunning for you, right? He's like, yeah, I wouldn't have it anyway. Because I was kind of scared. I was like, please don't let her like kill Maurice like right now. That'd be kind of sad. He just got the gig, and obviously like Reggie would not be happy about that. But it's like, right, I'm gonna give you some reprieve. I'm gonna probably, for her, it's like, I'm gonna make this a fair shot. Like I think I don't know. I mean, it's Angela. She's very ambitious, so you could easily see her being like, yo, I am going to take that throne from you. But it might just be a thing of like, yeah, that's our playful banter. So yeah, it might be, but I won't like seriously try, but I will actually still try, but not like 100%. We'll probably say like, I'll go 85, 90%, give you a chance or something for survival. So that's how I'm interpreting that. But him and Reggie are, Reggie telling Maurice, says like, hey, we'll make things change. We'll show, it's like, right, he's only the deacon of like this region. It's like, there's still other deacons of other regions. He's like, yeah, but we'll lead by example. We can make change. And it's like, right, we have all the time to make things possible now. So, and then him and Sarah, and it's like, right, there's the thing of, he's a vampire, she's a human. He touched her heart, but he also broke it. But for her, there's still a chance because she does still love him, and obviously he loves her. But it's like, for her, she's like, I gotta figure stuff out. Like, not just stuff with Reggie, but other stuff too. I'm assuming it has to correlate to her family, because like, yes, her brother was sent away, but there's always a possibility for that storyline to circle back around as well. So, but for now, it's like, hey, at the very least, we have the solace of knowing, like, he's like, at the very least, like, I can wait forever. Just tell me there's a chance. And she's like, we have a chance. So he's like, cool. So he can wait as long as much time as Sarah needs. So I'm rooting for the kids. I think it's going to work out. But then we got our reveal at the end where the angels showed up. It's Uriel in particular, which is like, interesting. I want to say, yeah, which I think obviously, like, I'm only familiar with certain angels' names because, well, obviously Supernatural, but also Lucifer, which I'm also thinking, like, he was the first angel to die. And it was kind of accidental, kind of didn't have much of a choice situation for Lucifer's had to kill a sibling. That's his only sibling that he's killed or had to kill. But I was like, yeah, Uriel, I wonder who's the one beside him. But it's like, yeah, the angels will come. It's like, oh, we're here to correct a mistake we made. I'm like, I wonder why after all of this time, why now? I wonder, is it because, did they know about Abraham's circumstances and will they come after him? Because, I'm sure even in their eyes, he's more of an abomination than anything, considering he is part angel. So he'd probably be the biggest abomination. But yeah, they come in, flaming swords in hand, obviously, end up killing Eve. It's like, well, Eve kind of, I did not mean to even do that. I'm like, the joke being there's a show called Killing Eve. I didn't even think about that. I was not even legitimately trying. I just accidentally slid into that. That's hilarious. Not hilarious, but interesting hilarious. But nevertheless, it's like, wow, the angels roll up and then they come after, they're there for Reginald at the very end of the episode. So I thought that was kind of a neat little, like, stinger for the future, which I'm like, first and foremost, I'm like, well, we know Reggie could compel other vampires. We don't know if he could, and even then it had its limitations, but that could just be like, hey, Reggie's only been a vampire for a short amount of time. Given him more time, the older he gets, eventually more powerful that power will get. Maybe angels aren't immune to it. I don't know, but that would involve bringing, like, Abraham back into the fold, considering this are his kin, especially because one side of his kin is coming to kill the other side of his kin. So, especially considering, Logan's not around anymore, which also, in retrospect, I referenced Supernatural earlier. Obviously, I've talked about it before, but the actor who played Logan is also deaf, which you're also like, oh man, that's so interesting. You play these ancient beings and you got murked in both Reginald and Supernatural. But like in this case, they couldn't let him, like, just live. It's like, nah, they had to, because things were never going to change with him in charge. And it makes you wonder, did Reggie ever, like, did he pass some of those tests enough to, like, be in a 50-50 situation? Because he didn't want to, well, I think it was always going to be the backup plan, but it's hard to say. I didn't talk about it either, but I do appreciate the almost Leverage style, like, oh, this is what's happening. Let's go back and explain the plan type of thing. Like, I really like that about Leverage, where it's like, hey, here's these secret reveals about, like, what was kind of set up ahead of time that you might not have noticed type of thing. So, very, very interesting introduction of the angels. I guess setting up them being the main antagonist going forward, now that everything with Logan's been taken care of. What things look like with Maurice kind of in charge. The whole Claire thing and her mom thing, what the hell that's about. I guess we'd be seeing more of Nikki because her and Ashley. Saying friends, but I'm like, it definitely has to be more than friends. Then if, like, the Mike and Todd thing, Todd wanting to be a vampire, will that ever eventually happen? I guess like a lot of her supporting cast, like, we'd probably see them a lot more going forward, potentially. At the time of me recording this, it's still unclear whether or not Syfy is going to renew this show, which I'm like, fingers crossed, hoping. I was like, please, 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 please renew it, because I really enjoy this show. It's just so much fun. There is still plenty of story to tell. As I brought up in the first episode, this is based on a series of novels called The Fat Vampire. So there's still plenty of story to tell. I am curious, once again, it's this interesting thing people kind of do with adaptations where they'll move certain storylines from an original material maybe up a little bit. So I'm assuming like everything we got this season was probably mainly an adaptation of the first book. I mean, that's also depending on how much they took from the books and how much was just them doing their own thing for the TV show. But if we're going by, like, you'd assume, like, maybe most of this, at least some of this was, like, maybe some of the first book or most of the first book or all of the first book. But it makes you wonder, were there any storylines from, like, future books that they moved up, or was things kind of... I'm curious, like, how much of a straight adaptation this was. Like, was it just pretty close adaptation, a decently close adaptation, or was it just kind of like it's just loose adaptations, you know? So I'd be curious to kind of know about that. But like I said, I hope we don't just get a season 2. I hope the show gets however many seasons it takes to take the story, like whether that's in 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons. 5 seasons is my benchmark to be like, hey, let every show at the very bare minimum get 5 seasons, because I think that's a good jumping off point for a lot of shows. It could be. I mean, if a show is able to go longer and does go longer, I'm never going to complain about that. But I'm just saying, at the bare minimum, I think a lot of shows should be at least given the opportunity to at least get 5 seasons. I think 5 seasons is a good benchmark as a bare minimum, at least in my opinion. Once again, it just depends on the show. You know, you take something like His Dark Materials, 3 seasons is enough, just because every season is kind of based on the books. Once again, maybe that's me talking from, like, having never read the book, so I don't know how much was left on the cutting room floor type of thing or whatever. Tensions and all that aside. So, like I said, once again, fingers crossed, hoping we do get a season 2, because I'd love to see where season 2 would take us, especially with the introduction of the angels and all these other storylines, these other story threads that we have left open. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.